Carl Jung believed that every human being carries a limited capacity to give, to be available, to respond to the world. But he also believed that most people lose themselves by giving too much of that capacity away. Availability is a form of energy. Every word you speak, every favor you grant, every emotional response you give, these are all pieces of yourself. And the tragedy is that people give them away without awareness. They give until they are empty. They give until the light within them dims. Jung observed that over-availability is rarely accidental. It is almost always a shadow pattern. It emerges from fear of abandonment, fear of conflict, fear of being judged. A child who feared rejection learned early to be endlessly available. They learned that if they spoke up too much, they would be punished. If they asked for attention, they would be ignored, so they adapted. They became the person who is always there, always giving, never refusing. And the shadow is born. The shadow contains the part of themselves they cannot acknowledge, their exhaustion, their resentment, their hidden needs, and their unspoken anger. It is in this shadow that their true purpose, their real self, waits. To understand what happens when a person stops being available, we must first understand why they became over-available in the first place. Society praises selflessness, compliance, and generosity. And yet, paradoxically, over-availability is often exploited. People who give too much are used by those who demand. They are drained emotionally, financially, spiritually, and they may not even notice because their patterns are unconscious. Jung would say that reclaiming oneself is not about becoming selfish. It is about recovering energy stolen by unconscious patterns. It is about discovering what truly belongs to the self and what was seeded for survival. The first step is awareness. Notice when you say yes out of fear. Notice when your energy is depleted by obligations that are not yours. Notice the subtle resentment that rises without conscious acknowledgement. Case 1. The over-available achiever. This archetype is the person who is constantly working to please, to prove worth, to be indispensable. In childhood, they were rewarded only when performing, only when helpful. They grew into adults who feel guilty saying no. And yet, every favor given drains a part of their vitality. Their shadow contains the suppressed ambition, the creativity, the authentic desire that was never safe to express. Case 2. The caretaker shadow. This archetype is the one who constantly prioritizes others' needs over their own. They give affection, attention, and energy to avoid conflict or to feel loved. Their shadow contains the unacknowledged anger, the hidden sorrow, the boundaries they never learned to hold. And the first moment they stop being available, the shadow surfaces: guilt, anxiety, fear of rejection. Case 3. The detached ghost. This archetype learned early to disconnect emotionally, to detach in order to survive. They may appear independent and strong, Yet the over-availability often manifests in hidden ways, a compulsion to check in, to be needed, to manage others' emotions from a distance. Stopping this pattern brings the shadow into view: fear, uncertainty, unprocessed desire for intimacy. Stopping over-availability is never simple. The first hours, the first days may bring intense anxiety. Old patterns push back like a shadow resisting light. The mind whispers, if you stop, they will leave. If you stop, you will be unloved. If you stop, you will fail. This is the shadow speaking, not the conscious voice. The shadow is the repository of every fear, every repression, every compromise made in the past. Jung would say that fear is often a signal pointing directly to your hidden life purpose. Where you feel resistance, there is growth waiting. Where guilt rises, there is a truth buried. Where panic flares, there is a part of yourself long denied. Case 4, the boundary breaker. This archetype had been so available that their identity was defined by others' expectations. They feared solitude because solitude exposed who they truly were. Once they attempted to stop being available, they faced isolation, criticism, and inner unrest. The shadow confronted them with questions. Who am I without these obligations? What do I want if I am not constantly pleasing? This is the Jungian paradox. Liberation from over-availability triggers confrontation with the shadow. And yet, this confrontation is necessary. Because only by facing the shadow can a person reclaim energy, creativity, and authenticity. Jung identified 3 key psychological dynamics in this process. First, projection. The person often sees their own needs in others. They perceive demands and expectations that are partly imagined. This is the shadow reflecting itself outward. Second, internal sabotage. Stopping availability triggers the unconscious to create tension, distraction, or discomfort. The mind may manufacture emergencies, irritations, or doubts, all designed to pull energy back into old patterns. Third, liberation. Once the shadow is acknowledged, the energy previously lost to unconscious giving begins to return. The person begins to feel boundaries as natural, not artificial. They begin to choose where to give and where to conserve. Case 5, the quiet reclaimer. This archetype learned early to be invisible, to disappear whenever conflict arose. By being endlessly available, they tried to avoid rejection. When they finally say no for themselves, a wave of liberation surges. But alongside this, liberation comes awareness of wasted time, of unnoticed talent, of long-suppressed ambition. Jung emphasized that over-availability is often an identity trap. People define themselves by how much they give. When they stop, they feel unmoored. Yet, in truth, identity lies not in giving, but in being. Being aware, being conscious, being aligned with one's true self. Here is the crucial insight. Every time you are over-available, you are investing in someone else's narrative, not your own. Every yes given unconsciously is a piece of your essence you surrender. And each time you reclaim a no, you excavate your authentic self. From this perspective, the shadow is not punishment. It is a guide. It is the voice pointing to what is truly yours, to what was seeded under fear, and to what must be reclaimed to live fully. Case 6. The Silent Observer. This archetype learns to watch themselves and their reactions carefully. They notice the anxiety rising when they withhold availability. They track the impulses to give unnecessarily. They begin to see patterns, which people, which situations, which emotions trigger the compulsion to give. This self-awareness becomes a map for recovery. Jung taught that human beings are rarely fully aware of the energy they expend simply by being available. Every interaction, every obligation, every emotional labor consumes a part of the self. And most people give unconsciously, without evaluating the cost. Stopping over-availability is therefore not just a practical decision. It is a profound psychological experiment. It challenges every adaptive pattern formed in childhood. It exposes the illusions that shaped identity. Case 7. The Withdrawn Protector. This archetype grew up in a home where emotional availability was demanded, not reciprocated. They gave endlessly to protect others from pain, absorbing suffering like a sponge. The act of withholding availability initially triggers guilt, shame, and fear. Yet the shadow shows the hidden self, the creative, unbound, and authentic energy that was never safe to express. Jung emphasized that the shadow is not merely the dark or forbidden parts of the self. It also holds the latent potential, the skills, the ambitions, the desires that were suppressed for survival. By confronting the shadow, a person begins to recover these lost dimensions. Reflection. Every time you stop saying yes unconsciously, you give yourself space to feel. You give yourself permission to reclaim energy stolen by fear. You allow the hidden self to emerge from the shadows. Case 8. The Repressed Visionary. This archetype had ambitions they were never allowed to voice. By being endlessly available, they were protecting themselves from criticism or failure. When they start setting boundaries, the shadow arises, doubts, fears, accusations from within. But in facing these fears, they uncover their purpose. Jung observed that stopping over availability is rarely smooth. Old patterns often fight back. Emotional triggers flare. Relationships may shift. Some people resist, some withdraw. Yet these disruptions are symptoms of liberation. Practical insight. Track your emotional responses. Notice when guilt or fear emerges. Label these as the voice of the shadow. The shadow is not punishment, it is information. It reveals exactly what was seeded and what must be reclaimed to live authentically. Case 9. The energized boundary keeper. This archetype begins to reclaim energy methodically. They stop overgiving, even in small ways. And they notice a subtle shift. Clarity emerges, creativity increases, and a sense of self begins to strengthen. The shadow now serves as a guide, pointing toward purpose rather than a jailer of energy. Jung's philosophy emphasizes integration. The shadow is not banished, it is incorporated. The impulses that once drove over-availability are transformed into awareness and choice. The reactive yes becomes a conscious decision. The self is no longer defined by the demands of others. Reflection. What you withhold from the world may actually be a way to give to yourself. The energy you reclaim is the energy you invest in your authentic path. And this reclaimed energy illuminates your purpose. Case 10. The integrated self. This final archetype has faced every shadow impulse related to over-availability. They have acknowledged guilt, anxiety, and fear. They have observed projections, internal sabotage, and compulsions. And they have chosen boundaries consciously. In doing so, they awaken the authentic self and with it, the dormant life purpose.